My name is Meredith Swartz. I've been in state procurement for over 20 years now, which is crazy. I started off with the National Guard, and I've been with DOA since 2015. DOA is a different kind of agency. It's one of the cabinet agencies that the governor appoints our secretary. And so with that, we call ourselves the land of the misfit toys. We have lots of different agencies that are in different realms of state government. DOA is considered the business office for state government. So with that, we have all of our advocacy groups, which includes the hub office, which is why, yes, I'm passionate about the hub office, but also work very closely with them and try very hard to reach our hub goals because they are one of our divisions that we support as far as their needs for buying things and completing their purchases. We also have asset management. We manage all of the buildings, the state-owned property in the downtown complex. So we do lots of janitorial and building maintenance and HVAC and parking and all of those types of services for the downtown area in Raleigh. We also have state construction underneath DOA. So state construction, when we get into these rules and the laws and how we buy, state construction is a department under DOA. They have their own set of rules and policies on how state construction projects buy, and we'll kind of go through that. But they are a DOA agency, so we work closely with them as well. We have state property that manages all the leased property and the owned property portfolio for the entire state. Then we have some state services that provide services to other departments within the state, including Mail Service Center that manages all the incoming mail to the state as well as mass mailings that go out for the state. We have Motor Fleet, which manages the entire fleet of vehicles for the state, including Highway Patrol and all the other vehicles that the state owns. We have Purchase and Contract. You're going to hear me talk about statewide purchase and contract. That is the division that writes the rules and the policies on how taxpayer dollars are spent within the state. So they are one of our agencies. So if they have to buy something, they come to my office to buy it, but we follow their rules as far as how we buy. Then we have state and federal surplus property. They manage all of the selling of used property by the state. I'm going to go into how that division can help you guys out as a new business. They do offer auctions as well as a warehouse where you can go buy things if you're setting up a new spot. We, like I said, are the land of the misfit toys, where we have these other departments that are too small to have their own fiscal office to manage their procurement or their budgets. We have those. So we help out the Office of State Human Resources, which is OSHR. We help out the Lieutenant Governor's office. We just got the residential schools that are now under us as of July 1. That includes Governor Moorhead School, the School of the Deaf, North Carolina School of the Deaf out in Morganton, and then the Eastern School of the Deaf, which I think is in Wilson, North Carolina. So those three schools, we are helping them with their large-scale procurement. And then we have Military and Veterans Affairs, which is another department within the state that is a smaller department that we do their procurement. So with this, I just lay all this out to tell you that we buy a lot of different things when it comes to the goods and services that we actually buy. I think that's part of the reason why I love working for DOA, is because it's diverse. It's something different every day. And we do a lot of different services throughout our agency to meet their needs. So the topics that we're going to hit in this presentation is we're going to talk about the rules of state procurement, the rules and the laws that guide how we spend those taxpayer dollars. We're going to talk about registering with the state. If you are a hub vendor, I know that we may have some that are not already registered as a hub vendor. We'll go over how to register. If you are already a certified hub vendor, you are already registered. Part of your registration to become a hub vendor is registering within EVP to work with the state as a state registered vendor. So that has already happened for you, but we'll go through how to update that information as well. We'll talk about the Hub program and what is included in the Hub program and how it is a great program, and all of the different opportunities that you get to reach out to the state through the Hub office and what they're there for, and how to make sure that your registration and certification with the Hub office is up to date. We'll talk about how the state seeks competition, where we post, where we reach out, how we get those bids back. We'll talk about the solicitation response methods. So if we have a bid out on the street, how you respond. And then when we get those bids back, how do we evaluate them? What do we look for within those bids and those proposals that come back? We'll talk about once it's awarded, what happens in the back end now that you have a contract, and really the monitoring through the term of the contract and what that should look like. So like I said, it's a lot of information. Feel free. This is all for you guys. So if you have questions, put those in the chat, raise your hand, and then we'll get to them during those breaks. So we're going to start off talking about the rules and the laws that govern state procurement. We're going to go over the differences between goods and services, because there are some nuances with that as far as our procedures. We're going to talk about the different types of contracts that we have within the state, and then delegations, which is how much money something is estimated to be, drives then our procedures and what those policies look like. So within the state, there are the North Carolina general statutes. Those are the actual laws that govern how taxpayer dollars are spent. They're written by our state legislature and are visible for anybody to view or see. You heard me say statewide P&C. All of the websites that I talk about today are in the back of this presentation. You can go out on P&C's websites and get access to the general statutes that lay out how taxpayer dollars are spent. Along with that is also the administrative code. So the administrative code are the rules that take the statutes, put them into rules of what we can and cannot do, approval flows, things like that, into the administrative code. Then from there is the North Carolina Procurement Manual. That outlines all the procedures that have to happen in state procurement. And these are all associated to all state agencies. So we're talking about all of the North Carolina cabinet agencies, state agencies, universities, community colleges, some municipalities, and even a lot of the charter schools and the public schools. Within that, each one of those entities would have their own procurement manual. So these are the policies, procedures, manuals, laws, or whatnot that guide how we do. Nothing down to in the purchasing manual can supersede the things above it. So that is really the rule of how we go through that procurement is general statutes outweigh the administrative code, which outweighs the procurement manual, which outweighs that agency's manual. But each agency has their own delegations under their authority that is spelled out in their procurement manual. We also use the OSBM budget manual for all of our travel needs. So if somebody is traveling for the state, the information on how we buy hotel stays, flights, whatever, is authorized. Per diems is all listed in the state's budget manual. So we talk about the actual administrative code and the general statutes. We have three different types of procurement. We have standard goods and services, which is anything that we're buying that is a tangible property, or we are hiring an actual company to do something for us. That is followed under the general statutes, Chapter 143, Article 3, and the Administrative Code, Title 1, Chapter 5. So the laws are under that general statute, and the rules, procedures are under the Administrative Code, Title 1, Chapter 5. For information technology, those are still goods and services, but they touch anything that touches data. So hardware, software, any type of data element becomes a DIT, Department of Information Technology, procurement. They have a little bit of different general statutes. They do 147, and the administrative code is Title 9, Chapter 6 of the procedures and the rules for buying IT related. There's a lot of information in those general statutes and the administrative code on security risk, right? With everything that's going IT now, a lot of their procurement rules include the security reviews of what we're buying. So that's all included in those general statutes. And then finally, we have state construction. State construction, like I said, is a department under DOA, but they have their own set of rules of how they buy for state construction capital improvement projects. So what we consider state construction projects are anything that is a renovation or alteration of a physical property. So if we are physically building something from ground up, or if we are altering where we need design review, some kind of engineering, moving walls, changing wiring, that potentially can become a state construction project. Their statutes are written in Chapter 116, 143, 153, and they have their own manuals that they follow for their procurement. What we're focusing on today are the standard goods and services and DIT purchases, so information technology purchases, under these rules. State construction, when we do have things, we still, under standard goods and services, do some small renovations. We do mostly maintenance, any kind of maintenance, fire alarm changing out, things like that. That's still done under standard goods and services. If we have something that teeters on that line, our office will go out and reach out to state construction and say, hey, is this you guys or us? And we'll make that decision on which procurement rules it'll follow under. So who are your potential customers in those two areas? Well, like I said, we got 28 executive state agencies, 58 community colleges in North Carolina, 16 public universities. We have over 2,500 public and charter schools. We have 100 counties in North Carolina, 50 plus municipalities. We all are going to follow the same systems and processes. There might be some deviations depending on if you're dealing with state agencies or schools or universities. But as a whole, we all have access to the same systems. We all have the same access to where we post our bids. So you should be able to see where these bids are posted out there on EBP for all of these different customers, entities within the state. We're going to focus, of course, on the executive state agencies because that's what I'm with. I'm with the Department of Administration. So with that, when I said there's 28 of us, we've got Administration, Commerce, DEQ, which is Environmental Quality, DHHS, Department of Information Technology, Military and Veteran Affairs, which is one that I also handle, Natural Cultural Resources, Public Safety, Revenue, Transportation, Agriculture, Insurance, Justice, Labor, Public Instruction, Secretary of State, Treasury, Lieutenant Governor, which I handle, State Auditor, Administrative Hearings, Board of Elections, Community College System, Education Lottery, General Assembly, Office of the Governor, which I also help them, Ports Authority, State Controller, and Wildlife. So just within those 28 states, we all buy a variety of things. Everybody needs office supplies. Everybody needs, certain things for building automation, those types of services. And then you have the nitty-gritty niches that maybe those offices have a need for. So when you're marketing to them, we're going to go over kind of a good way to get in with these different state agencies and the universities and community colleges to be able to show you where you can find contacts for them. But just think about what would the Department of Justice need when it relates to what you actually offer in the commodity codes that you pick. So we're going to talk about all of that through this presentation. So what happens first? Somebody says I got to buy something. And so we are the question people in procurement. We're not the doer people. We are the question people. So we make sure that the department gets what they need, not what they want, but we're asking the questions. So what are you trying to buy? How much do you think it's going to cost? Does your division have funding? Do you actually have the money to do this? How do you buy it? So what is, based on how much money it is and what you're trying to buy, what are those steps that you got to take? And what is the documentation need so that you can justify how you bought it and that it is then defendable if we're writing an actual contract? So in purchasing, the procedures are all determined really by two things. What are you trying to buy? So what is it? Is it a good or a service? And how much does it cost? So that we have different policies for goods versus services. We have some mandated resources within the state where we have to keep those taxpayer dollars within the state and go to other state agencies to fulfill that need before we go out into open market. When I say open market, that's going out to the vendor community to fulfill whatever we're trying to do. It's also based on delegations, how much we estimate that project to be, that good, that service. And then there always are some special circumstances as far as proprietary things, software, and emergencies and all of that. So we're going to go through kind of these different sections of what we're trying to buy and to let you know what the procedures are. So what is goods versus services? Well, goods are those tangible goods, commodities, supplies, materials, equipment, and other tangible projects you could actually put your hands on. And with goods, the vendor is charged a 1.75 e-procurement fee to get a purchase order. And so we're going to go over what that fee is used for and all of that, but know that it is only assessed to goods based on the commodity code. So goods could be vehicles, they could be office supplies, they could be a piece of equipment, whatnot, but goods are those tangible property. Services are intangible work or tasks performed by an individual that has that specialized knowledge, skills to do that work. It could be anything from plumbing to power washing to consultant service to whatnot is a service. And the vendor is not charged the 1.75 fee on any service purchases. When I said mandated resources, you'll see that a lot of our divisions at DOA are under those mandatory resources because we are the business office for the state, right? So we do have mandatory state term contracts that all of our state agencies, those 28 state agencies that I listed out, are mandated to use the mandatory state term contracts. DIT and PNC both have mandatory state term contracts. Those contracts still go out for bid, still have open market bidders on them and vendors on them from the community, but we're mandated to use those first to meet our need. We also have Correction Enterprises, which is a department within adult corrections. This is an opportunity for our incarcerated individuals to learn a skill while they are incarcerated to hopefully help them when they are released out into the community. So they provide things such as framing, all of our wooden office furniture. They build bookcases, they build desks, they provide our office chairs, they put them together. They provide moving services. They provide all of the food that is supplied to the prisons is all provided there by Correction Enterprises. They also have printing services. They have a small print shop. They can't do a lot in that print shop, but they are our first stop to fulfill our printing needs. And if they can, then it has to go to Correction Enterprises. State and federal surplus property is one of the divisions of DOA. It is located over off of Chapel Hill Road off of 54, Highway 54. This office takes all of the state's used property, including vehicles, computers, desks, anything, any used property, golf carts, all of it. Universities, community colleges, state agencies, everybody gives all of their used equipment to the Office of Surplus Property. And surplus property resells it to the community to get taxpayer dollars, right? To get an influx of services into the state to help pay for things within the state. So with that, if you are setting up a new office or whatnot, you can always go out there to State Surplus, look around. They have a warehouse as well as they have an online auction service. So you can check out their website if you just simply Google North Carolina surplus property, or it's under DOA as well. So you can always look at the Department of Administration, and that's one of our agencies. We also have the Mail Service Center. So everybody think about your DMV registration sticker, right? That gets issued out to, I got somebody that's not muted. If you can mute your phone, So we have the mail service center. Everybody that receives your sticker from the DMV for your registration, when that is mailed out to you, it is sent out through the mail service center. So any mass mailings that we have like that goes through the mail service center. We get a break on postage because we're the state. So to save those taxpayer dollars again, all of that is mandated to go out through the mail service center. So if we have any kind of mass mailing project, we ask them, we are mandated to go through the mail service center first before we go out to the vendor community to ask for those type of services. State construction office, we kind of highlighted that. Anything that is considered construction goes through state construction office, follows their procurement. State property handles all of our leased property. So if we are setting up leased leased property, the state property office negotiates and sets up those lease agreements through their office. Or if we're selling property, they have real estate agents on staff that then sell our property as well. If we have any other needs, especially like consulting services or things like that, we could reach out to the universities to fulfill those needs. If we ever have one agency that is doing something for us, it doesn't go out for bid. It is written, and the contract is written on what's called a memo of understanding, or a memo is also a memo of agreement that agrees to the tasks and the services that will be provided between the two departments. So those are written on MOUs. So we do all of these mandated resources to keep those taxpayer dollars within the state. So we're not exercising and spending those. We're fulfilling it within the state agencies. So you heard me talk about state term contracts, both DIT and PNC, so the information technology and purchase and contracts, so standard goods and services as well as IT purchases, each have their own procurement statewide offices that approve purchases and manage statewide term contracts. The whole point of the state term contracts is so that all of the divisions, universities, community colleges, state agencies, municipalities, everybody can use these contracts. They provide lower prices, good quality products, and they have to be able to deliver to anywhere within the state. To get on those, they are posted just like all other bids out on EVP. We have things for such as vehicles, computers, standard softwares. We even have services such as some auditing services. We have office supplies, things like that, that everybody within the state would potentially use are out on state term contract. There are lists of both the DIT and PNC state term contracts out on their websites that includes who the contract manager is. If you have any questions on, hey, when is this going back out for bid? How do I get on this contract? Can I see what the terms of this contract is? You can reach out, you can do your research and see who owns that contract and reach out to be able to answer those questions. There are some that are mandatory, some that are convenience. So the mandatory ones, the state agencies are mandated to use. The convenience contracts we could use, or we could go back out for bid for whatever we need. So we talk about delegation, that's how much money, right? Open market, which open market is going out to the vendor community, a procurement that's purchased within our rules and our regulations by the state from the vendor community. So we're not doing those mandated resources, didn't meet the needs, and now we're going to the vendor community. So the overall general delegation, each state agency, university, community college has a set general purchasing delegation where the state procurement officer approves them to handle in-house. Anything under that delegation can be handled at the department level. Anything over that delegation, it has to go through extra approvals, extra steps, extra security reviews for DIT, anything over that delegation. Across the board for both goods and services, as well as IT services, now for us at DOA, and throughout this presentation, you're going to see things highlighted in yellow that is specific to my department. Ours is set at 100,000. So anything under 100,000 in either one of those cases, whether goods and services or IT, anything under anything under that 100,000 is handled by my staff at DOA. Anything over that has to go to statewide IT or PNC for approvals. Takes a little bit longer. So we look at that and we break it down within my procurement policy. So, right, that's the agency policy. Anything under that 100,000, each agency can write. So again, this is highlighted in yellow. So this is what my open market policy says. Most of the other state agencies follow this same thing, but there might be a little variation. Some people might allow more to be on P cards than we do. Some departments may allow for higher thresholds before they go out for formal competition, but most of them all follow this same outline. So anything under $2,500, we consider a micro purchase. We do have a P card program through Bank of America. So our users can just simply put something that's open market where the mandated resources didn't meet our needs onto a P card. Anything that is under 31,000 is the new small purchase threshold. So under that amount at DOA, we only require one quote as long as that quote is from a hub vendor. So that is in an effort to meet our hub efforts. So under $31,000, we say, just go get a hub vendor quote. We automatically cut the PO to the hub vendor and we're done. And that expenditure ensures that it goes to a hub vendor. If there aren't hub vendors that meet the need of what you're trying to buy, then I need 3 quotes. We go with the lowest quote and issue that PO. For informal competition, it's over that small purchase threshold. So that $31,000 is our small purchase threshold. Anything over that, the rules in the administrative code say that we have to get the vendor to sign the terms and conditions of doing business with the state. So this informal competition is done where we are getting under contract. So the difference is at 31,000, we're strictly just getting a quote and we're just cutting a PO. At 31,000 or above, we now have to get the vendor under contract. So from 31,000 to 50,000, we consider it informal, where we still go out and get quotes. At least one of those has to be from a hub vendor, but we have to get quotes. It all goes to the lowest vendor. The vendor signs an actual document, which is an RFQ, or we have a PDF for goods. We'll go through all these different documents, what they look like, how they're used. But the RFQ is signed to the terms and conditions, and we execute the PO for the lowest vendor of the quotes. Over 50 grand is what we consider formal competition. So over 50 grand, we now are posting the bid out to EVP. So that's for the whole world to see, to be able to actually bid on. So any bidders can bid on that formal bid at 50 grand. We use the 2 documents of either an IFB, which is a invitation for bid, or an RFP, which is a request for proposal. Same thing if it's over that, up to 100, right? Or I'm sorry, over 100,000, we still do all the same things that we would do at 50, except for we get those extra approvals, because that 100,000 is our general delegation. We have to get the extra approvals by statewide PNC or statewide DIT before they approve it, before we post it, and they approve it on the back end when we go to award it. So they look at it twice before we actually complete that project. All of these numbers, these amounts, are based off the total contract value. So if I had a 5-year contract that's $10,000 a year, then that's a $50,000 contract, right? If I had a 3-year contract that was $10,000 a year, that's a $30,000 contract, right? So that delegation is based on the entire term of the contract with any optional renewals. So if it's a 1-year contract, with optional renewals built into it, it's that total amount, including all those options that we potentially want to exercise. That's what drives these dollar amounts. Any contracts that we estimate to be over $1 million in that total term have legal review at the front end and the back end added in these reviews here. So anything over $1 million takes a little bit longer to get out on the street and get to a little bit longer to get approvals because it's got to go through legal review for that. So the two different types of contracts that we have are just our standard term contracts, which is just a binding agreement where you're agreeing to those terms and conditions for goods or services. And then we have the agency-specific term contracts. So those operate a lot like our state term contracts, but they're for a particular agency. So we are awarding that contract over a term to provide that good or service, but we are not guaranteeing any work under it, right? So my office has this for environmental lead abatement, right? So if we own all these buildings downtown that are old and falling apart, and we look for asbestos, we have a contract with a vendor that went out for bid, and then through that term, we can call that vendor out as needed to check for lead or asbestos or whatever it is, as needed under that contract. So the rates for that are approved up front. We've done our due diligence to go out for bid for that up front. We've obligated the monies for it up front so that we have that pot of money that then we're hitting against. So it works a lot like a state term contract, but it's only for DOA. So every agency has the ability to do agency-specific term contracts or standard term contracts. When you see bids posted out, they're either just called an agency contract or an agency-specific contract. Or if it's posted by a statewide DIT or PNC, it could be a statewide contract, which is those statewide term contracts, which are the ones that anybody within the state can use. On average, most of our contracts have a 3-year term. Any longer than that, we do have to get approval and justify why we need a longer term. So that would be an additional approval that would happen throughout the process. But on average, a 3-year term, often it's 1 year with 2 options. It's up to the state on whether they want to exercise those options. There's often times where scope could change. Maybe we don't need the services anymore. Maybe there's multiple reasons why we would not opt to do those optional renewals, but it's up to the state on whether they opt to do those renewals. So just know that if there's a 1-year contract with 2 optional renewals, it's not giving you a 3-year contract. It is an optional renewal. The service contracts, we've got 2 different types of service contracts. A standard contractual service contract is just where we're contracting with that individual that has that specialized knowledge and experience. Standard service contracts, janitorial companies, landscaping, hazardous waste, security guards, training instructors, building maintenance, things like that. A consultant service is a little different. What we consider a consultant service in state procurement is where a vendor is coming in and analyzing one of our programs, and they're going to give their advice, their report on what they have analyzed. They're going to do a counsel. They could provide counsel and review and analysis and advice, but they're not going to actually implement any of the changes that they suggest or any of their analysis that they suggest. So any consultant service contracts go through an additional approval to make sure that we can't meet those needs within the state using the universities or something else to complete those. With service contracts, the vendor is receiving payments for services over $600. They will get the 1099 form for that. So a little bit more on the IT purchase side of the house. Know that their general statutes are a little different. It's 143B 1320. This includes anything for hardware, software, online, database subscriptions, license agreements. It's really anything that touches data. So or if we are giving you to complete your service the state's data. So we want to know where, if we're giving you data, such as I have a printing bid that is currently open, where you're getting the printer is getting access to PII to know what to send out. So it's printing and mailing to know what to send out. They're getting the state's employees PII to be able to meet the needs and know which document they're supposed to print and mail out to that individual. So with that, printing is a standard goods and service, but because there's that data element where the vendor is getting that data, the state wants to know where's that data being held and is it secure and who has access to it and those types of things. So that has now become a DIT procurement. More and more, the way the world is, things have an AI element or any of that, it all becomes a DIT procurement. So with that, the state DIT team reviews and approves before we post those bids. They also have their term contracts for the whole state to use for standard software, hardware, telecom, IT services. They do have an IT staffing state term contract for coders and things like that we can buy off. One of their contracts, I think it is that staffing contract, is a continuous open bidding situation. So they continually put more and more vendors on those contracts. Like I said, their state term contracts are all listed on their website. The website will be in the back of this presentation. Just know if you see a bid out there that is a Department of Information Technology, a DIT procurement, there could be asking the vendor to supply with its bid the VRAR, which is a vendor readiness assessment report that talks about where's that data stored, supplied. A SOC 2 report is also concerning your security on that data. So just look for those in a solicitation that's posted and make sure you submit it with your bid if that's where it's asked for. Getting into those special circumstances, things are always gray in procurement, and there are special needs. The building could be flooded, and we got to get somebody to come suck all the water out. There could be things that we have to waive our policies, procedures for waivers of competition. Anything that falls under that, there is a list of what is an approved waiver that is within the administrative code. So if you ever see the NCAC, that's the administrative code, which is the second tier, the rules from the laws that lays out what can be an approved waiver. Some things are like sole source, if it's brand specific, if there's an emergency, if it's standardization, so it's got to fit into a piece of equipment we've already got, if there's an ongoing job or task. Either way, any waiver is justified by the department in a narrative to say that this is why, and those waivers are approved by the procurement office to say, yeah, we agree that this is enough information to say, yes, we can move forward with a waiver and go outside of our rules. All right, I know that was a lot. We're going to stop here for our first question session. I see that we do have one hand up.
Hey, good morning.
Yeah, Tiffany.
Yes, how are you doing?
Good.
Thank you for your time this morning. I had a question. I believe it was like slide 15 about the service contracts with the option for renewal. If it's 1 year and an option for a 3 year.
Right.
If they decide to look for another vendor, are you given the opportunity to reapply or?
For sure. So
Okay.
normally, yeah, I would say that unless you're always able to rebid unless for some reason you've been disbarred by the state, which doesn't happen very often. But even if there was, if it was not renewed based on performance issues, just know that performance could come back into when they rebid it, that they could use that performance. But if it's strictly normally, we exercise those renewals unless there is some major change in the scope or like I have one right now that is with the SBI building where they're requiring fingerprinting. And so we need to confirm who was paying for the fingerprinting on that. So with that, our people that were working in the building before are not fingerprinted because we are now having to put that into the scope of the contract, and it very well could be that the vendor's going to have to pay for that. Then we're not going to renew. We're going to let the expiration of the term run out, and then at the time before renewal, we'll put it back out for bid, clear up all that scope so that we get everything under contract going forward. But the vendor that is currently has those services can rebid as well, right? So it's not anything to do with that. It could just be that the scope is changing drastically. So that's why we're rebidding.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yep.
That answers my question.
Okay. Yeah, we got Karen McDougal. You want to take yourself off mute?
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
No
Karen is fine. So I just have a question. So I am brand new to the vendor world. I just got certified. Okay. And so I've never bid on anything. So I'm wondering if this orientation is going to kind of hold the new person's hand in terms of, you know, what that process looks like, how to get started, what paperwork, what forms, whatever the case may be.
Absolutely. We're going to get into all that. We're going to go over where to find bids, where to find those opportunities, and then as well as how to submit a good proposal and what we're looking for when those proposals are submitted for what we're looking for to be able to award. So we're going to go through all of that. Yep.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. And we got one more, Wyatt.
Oh, yes, ma'am. I wanted to ask a question about how to get on a list for the micro purchase and the small purchase for the hub.
So with those, and we're going to go through how we find those vendors, that is all part of the registration. Gets you to be registered to do business with the state. So that you're registering to be a North Carolina vendor. You're also registering to be able to receive purchase orders. So we use within that EVP, it's one system that attaches not only for the vendor registration, your hub certification, and our purchasing system, e-procurement. And so we're able to pull from those registered vendors to look for those. There's a vendor search. And so that we can look under a commodity code and say, here's 5 vendors. By the way, I can pull just hub vendors to say that here's 5 vendors I can go get those quotes from. So we're going to go through all of that and how that kind of works. I'm going to do one more, and that is Reese, I think. Reese Daniel.
Reese, you're on mute.
All right. The chat.
Said he's having trouble with the mic.
Okay. I see that there's in the chat, do bids and bid inquiries have to be submitted through the Ariba sourcing tool. So we'll get into how to submit your bids. If it is a bid that is posted that is how you submit it, then yes, it would have to go through the tool, but it is listed in that solicitation how to submit your bid. We'll get into all of that. This is from Reese. Are there set-aside programs for micro purchase thresholds that are easier to win from new vendors? What is the standard payment timeline? We're going to get into payments in the back end of this. We do pay net 30, but we'll get into the weeds of that in a little bit. The state of North Carolina does not have set-aside programs. We do have an aspirational goal, which we'll get into in the hub portion of this presentation. But with that, each department has their own hub plans. And as you saw in mine, for those small purchases, we do encourage our individuals when they're going out and getting those quotes, if they get a hub quote, they only need one quote from that hub vendor to ensure that it goes to hub stain. So we have a couple of those, which we'll go through our whole hub plan here too. All right. Is that good, Carla? One more. I heard you say that the purchasing department have the to award projects for bids lower than 31,000. Is that equal or less than? So it is up to 31,000. Anything over 31,000 goes into where we have to get under contract. So that's when we actually sign a contract. We still could do the informal quoting, but we have to get the vendor to sign the terms and conditions. So we get quotes, and then from those quotes, we get the vendor under contract. All right. I'm going to push forward. I do see that we have a couple more hands raised, but maybe we'll get to those in an effort of time.
Yeah.
All right. So next, we're going to get into doing business with the state. We're going to talk about our different systems that we use. We're going to go through e-procurement, how to register within EVP. Know that if you're a hub vendor, you are already registered in EVP. That was step one. We're going to talk about how e-procurement was upgraded in 2020 and what changed. So if you were registered as a hub vendor before 2020, some things to look out for and update in your registration. So with e-procurement is our electronic ordering system that's used by most state agencies. E-procurement provides a single point of access for North Carolina government organizations. So when I say that organizations, we got our state agencies, universities, community colleges, some of the municipalities, some of the counties, some of the schools all use e-procurement. It increases our order accuracy through the receipt of electronic orders. So when you register, it's going to ask you for email addresses, contacts. It's going to say, do you want to receive POs? Make sure that you check that because it's all linked. The e-procurement system is all linked to your registration in EVP. They're all really the same system. They all talk to each other. So how you register is how we contact you, whether by sending a PO, sending you an automated notice that something's posted for bid. All of that is under your registration in EVP. E-procurement also allows for many of our state term contracts to have uploadable, searchable catalogs. So something like our office supplies that is with a hub vendor, FSI, is linked within our system. So when we go buy office supplies, we literally, the system links out to FSI's website and we add a cart just like we're buying off of Amazon. And then it issues the PO to FSI to fulfill. So it's all electronic. It all works through how the vendor's registered, though. I want to be very clear. And it's very important that your email addresses, your contacts, your remit to addresses, all of that is up to date because it links to all of the systems, including the payment system. So with that, it is very, very important that your registration is up to date. I spoke before about goods. So goods within e-procurement. So if you're receiving a purchase order for a good through e-procurement, you are charged a 1.75 fee, and it's only on goods. So tip number one of this presentation, insider trading, is that if you are shipping something to us, so we have a good, and then you are shipping, when you submit your quote, do 2 lines. Do one for your shipping, one for your good, because the 1.75 fee will be charged to the commodity code that is for the good, not for shipping. Shipping is a service. So just a little insider trading on that is that you'll charge the 1.75 fee only on the goods. So what is that fee used for? It's used for us to be able to conduct business electronically. It supports the e-procurement system. It supports your help desk. So if you have any trouble with EVP, if you have any trouble with the Ariba system, if you have any trouble with e-procurement, getting a PO, all of that, we have a help desk dedicated to helping our vendors with our systems. So that 1.75 fee pays for that help desk. It also enables you to be able to market with all these state agencies electronically within the system. It allows for our vendor search. That's where you register. That's how we find the vendors that we do business with. So how can you benefit from that? It gives you that access to us, North Carolina market. It's a single point of access for all of the government entities, public schools, and community colleges. It increases the order accuracy because we're able to put in separate lines that are associated to a commodity code. Let's say that something is on back order. We have a line for that, and it can sit there before that PO is closed to give great accuracy on when we actually receive, and then you can invoice against that purchase order. Potential for supplier cost savings because of processing is all electronic on your end too. It all comes via email. So we did upgrade in 2020. We went from an on-premise system to a cloud-based system. With that, the biggest change that happened was the commodity codes. We were using NIGB codes back then, and now we are using the universally known UNSPSC codes. Just know that those are actually 8-digit codes. The state only uses the first 6 digits of those codes. Anything that starts with a 7, 8, or 9 are services. So like I said, if you're shipping something, it should be attached to a service code, not a goods code. That then designates that 1.75 fee. When you are registering with an EVP, you are the one that are picking the codes. It is very important that you look through those codes and you pick the ones where you actually do the work. Don't pick all the codes because you will get inundated with opportunities, and there's probably things you cannot do. I would suggest when you get done with this presentation today and this course today, you go log in, make sure your contacts are correct, and look at those commodity codes that you have registered under it. If you are registered before 2020, you are automatically transitioned into these UNSPSC codes. Just look at those. Make sure that it is still accurate in stuff that you do. There is a searchable list or a keyword at unspsc.org where you can look at those codes, but they're also listed within EVP. And PNC on their website has a complete PDF of all the codes that you can look through as well. So those tools are out there. There is training on the e-procurement website. So there's training for vendors on e-procurement, EVP. There's job aids on Ariba. There's all types of training for vendors that are registered to use these systems. There's like little training videos, and then there's others, just job aids that show you screenshots of what you're looking at to be able to help you. Like I said, there's also the help desk that's a hands-on person that you can talk to get help as well. But this is the link to all of the training for e-procurement. You've heard me say EVP a bazillion times. EVP is our one-stop shop now. It is wonderful. It links to e-procurement. It is automated to do business with the state. It gives you automatic notices when opportunities are posted. So our formal opportunities are posted out on EVP. It has our vendor search is on EVP. It is a one-stop shop that then also links within our e-procurement system. So once you're registered, I can pick you as a supplier to send the purchase order to you. It allows you to keep all that information up to date. And it's also where you certify for all your hub information now. So that's all done electronically through EVP as well. Like I said, you pick those commodity codes when a department, an entity of any sort, posts a bid under one of those commodity codes that you're registered. It sends you an automated message that says, hey, this opportunity has been posted under a commodity code in which you're registered. Do you want to bid on it? So that's one reason why those commodity codes are important. The other reason is that that's how we search for vendors, is under that commodity code. So just putting that out there. Go look at your registration, make sure that it's great. The benefits of the new EVP, I think this went into effect in maybe 2022. EVP, it consolidated the functionality of state procurement into a cloud-based system, allowing for all of us professionals to be able to do everything. For vendors, it has the registration of how to do business. You're able to view and submit your bid opportunities through EVP. It also lets you register for as a hub vendor and a small business enterprise, and it allows you to view tabulations and awards of those solicitations. So we post once awarded the tabulations. You're able to see all the bids that came back, who bid, how much they bid, and then who was awarded the contract. So all of that is posted through EVP. The new platform makes it easier for us to find those qualified vendors because you're registered, and then you're registered under those commodity codes. So EVP, all you need, like I said, if you're a hub vendor, you're already registered, but all you need is internet access, your federal tax ID or your EIN, and a valid email address to put in as your contact information. This is the link to EVP. You can simply Google North Carolina EVP and it will pop up. If you're not registered, you can click on vendor not registered, register now. You can look for opportunities without being logged in. You cannot submit a bid without being logged in, but you can look through those opportunities without being logged in. And you can also look through our vendor portal and see who are registered vendors. You can look just like we can. It's an open portal for vendors that are out there that are registered within the state. If you need any help with EVP, e-procurement, Ariba, this is the help desk. They are available 7:30 to 5:30, Monday through Friday. This is their phone number and this is their email. You can email them or call them at any time and you will get a live person to help you. They can see your side as a vendor is different in the Ariba system than it is for me and really in EVP too. So if you're trying to call the department, we're going to refer you to the help desk because we can't see that side of the systems as a vendor. I'm going to stop there. Any questions?
So we do have questions in the chat. Okay. And let's see. I'll start with, I think we left off with a question from Reese Daniel, which was, who are the key contacts for food and beverage purchasing within, he's asking within Hub and DOT, but statewide would probably.
Mm-hmm. All right. Who are the key contacts for food beverage purchases within Hub and DOT? So we do events. If you're registered, we could find vendors that way that do Hub and food and beverage for our events. We're going to show you how to find contacts for the different departments too. So I'm going to show you that. I think that might answer that. If bid and win an award, can I use subcontractors to support my award to the state, printing services or signs? Yes and no. So if you can, it might not be stipulated in the bid, in the solicitation document. If you can't, it should be stipulated. Like our janitorial services contracts with DOA, we do not allow you to subcontract the daily cleaning, but we do allow you to subcontract the major maintenance to come in and steam clean the carpets. So it would be stipulated in that particular procurement whether you could or could not use subcontractors. We might just want to know information on who those subcontractors are to ensure you meet any like required response times and things like that. So I would suggest when you are submitting your bid that if you are planning on using a subcontractor, make sure you provide that information and follow what any kinds of things that particular procurement is asking for. Are there mentorship or capacity building programs for vendors looking to scale? I'm not sure what that is unless I'm talking about the hub office for mentorship. I know that, Shay's no longer there. Carla, can you answer that one?
Sure, and we can, I can put my contact information in the chat to kind of take that offline. to discuss, to just get further detail. So I will place it in the chat.
Okay. And we answered about the help desk. Will you get copies of this presentation? Yes, you will. Can the vendor propose initiative programs like Juiced Up for consideration? Yes, so we're gonna, like I said, we have these different agencies. So if you feel like something that you provide could be used by one of the divisions of that agency, every State Department has a website. Maybe look through, see what their divisions are. And if you feel like you supply that, contact the purchasing office and say, this is what I do. Do you have one of your divisions, or here's my research. This is the division that I think could benefit from what I do. Do you have a contact for that person? And then really get into the weeds of that division is who you're going to need to talk to about marketing your stuff. So with that, very quickly, I'm going to show you on PNC's website, if it comes up. So literally Google DOA purchase and contracts. When you are in purchase and contracts website,
yeah,
over to the right, you will see EVP. You will see EVP department procurement contacts. Within that, it is a PDF that gives you a contact for each one of the state departments, as well as our universities, as well as schools, counties, community colleges. So as you see here, Department of Military and Veteran Affairs is me. You have my email address. You can email me and say, hey, this is what I do. I see that your department does this. Then you give me a contact, or maybe even on the DOA website, they'll have a contact. So just that's your insider trading number 2 there for that.
And I will place a link to that. Actually, it will be emailed. It's a part of our email going to the vendors.
Okay.
There was a question about the link.
All right. Where are we at? Okay. Are the NCDOT Connect projects letting listed in EVP as well? I'm assuming anything that's over that delegation that has to be posted, that's not some type of waiver or isn't done by one of those mandatory resources that's over 50 grand, over 100 grand, should be posted to EVP. I don't know about that particular project just because I don't work for DOT, but that's where you can look. And when you're in EVP, you can look by department and see what's open for that particular department. How do you find commodity codes? You either look on the list or you look in EVP. When you are registering, there's also the link to the commodity codes listed out completely on that website that I just showed for statewide procurement. If you just Google DOA purchase and contract, there's all kinds of information on there for commodity codes. Can I confirm my vendor profile is competitive and fully optimized? That's a question for Hub. Where can I find PDF list? That's there. That's on DOA's website.
Many companies. I'm sorry, Mayor. That link will be shared also for the commodity codes.
Okay. We provide hauling solutions for vendors. Company is allowed to use subcontractors. Like I said, subcontractors, it would be in the particular solicitation for that particular project on whether they are allowed or not. And I didn't get the number. Okay. I think that is it. I'm going to push forward in an effort of time. So we're going to get into the Hub program and the benefits of the hub program. I'm going to go over what DOA hub efforts are and what is needed for hub certification. Listed in this presentation, I know the majority of you are hub vendors, so I'm not going to go into the actual details, but it is all listed in the presentation of the actual documents that are needed to be submitted to become hub certified. So with that, hub was put into effect under Executive Order 25, General Statute 143, 128.2. Our overall aspirational goal for hub participation is 10%. That's not only for goods and services, but also for state construction procurement. So with that, it is not a set aside. It is not a set aside. We do not award based on hub certification, but we do do extra efforts in an effort to try to meet our 10% goal. They are marked when you're registered and you are actually certified by either a hub vendor or a small business enterprise. You are marked within that hub, within our vendor search. Within e-procurement, you're also marked as certified. So that's how that spend is captured, is through our systems as an actual certified hub vendor. All of the application to become a hub vendor, the certification, and the recertification that happens every 4 years is now processed through our EVP. John, I see you have a hand up if you would like to expand.
Sure thing. Thank you, Meredith. And recertification is really why I wanted to say that. I really want to stress to all the hub vendors on here to pay attention to your emails that come out and say, hey, your certification is up for recertification. Please pay attention to that, and please act before your expiration date. If you do not get it done before that expiration date, you'll have to start all over, and we don't want that to happen. The recertification process is not terribly intense. It's asking for some updates of things. So please, when you see that, please start acting on it right away. It's a lot easier to go through and do the recertification than it is to do the certification all over again. And that's all I wanted to say.
Certification is every 4 years, correct?
Correct.
All right. So when I first came on at DOA as the manager, the purchasing manager, director over here at DOA, our hub numbers do not look good. I will be quite honest. We do have motor fleet underneath us, and so we buy millions of dollars worth of vehicles. So those are on that statewide term contract that we're mandated to use. So if you are a vehicle vendor, please reach out to PNC and see if you can, and your hub vendor, please reach out and see if you can get on that vehicle contract. I would love that. That would exponentially change my hub percentage. However, I met with the hub office, like I said, because they are one of our divisions, and wanted to see what we could do internally to increase our hub spend. So with that, we added language to all of our solicitations. So those when we're getting under contract and the vendor's actually signing something, that we send, part of that is the attachment on hub spend. It asks, do you identify as a hub vendor? Are you a woman-owned, minority-owned, disabled-owned business that could be hub certified? If so, are you already certified? If not, can we get you certified before we cut those POs? And then also we asked for, is there any subcontractors? So we've talked a little bit about subcontractors. Are there going to be any subcontractors? And if so, are they certified to be able to capture that additional spend? So that started at DOA. It is now standard in all procurement within the state, which I'm proud to say that our hub office put that together. And it's now an attachment in all of the solicitations that go out for the state. We also at DOA, we do forecasting, so we're able to notify the hub office of things we know that are coming. We do annual department procurement plans that say these are the different opportunities that we have coming. My office sends a monthly report of things that we...
Meredith just muted.
Yep, got it. I don't know what happened. Either have posted or getting ready to post. that are coming so that the hub office can reach out and help us find vendors. Our hub liaison, we actually have a liaison that works for me that also does hub efforts. She does market research up front when we have those to reach out to the vendor community and says, hey, we have this project that's coming down the pipeline. You're registered under this commodity code. Is it something that you're actually going to bid on? And then at the time that it does get posted, we reach out directly to those vendors and say, hey, this is now bid. It's now out there for you to bid on. You said that you were interested. Please bid on it in an effort to reach our hub spend. Notices of those opportunities, once they are posted, we notify the hub office. They also post on their websites, and we direct solicitation by our hub liaison to those individual hub vendors that want to. This is in yellow. This is my hub plan. So it's only at DOA that we're doing these extra things. This hub language is added to all of our solicitations by all the other departments as well. I don't know why it keeps muting me. All right. So the other part of our hub plan is where we talk about getting those quotes from the hub vendor community in those open market purchases. So open market purchases where we're at 3,100 or less. So under that 31,000, not 3,100, 31,000, our small purchase threshold, we only require one hub vendor. So that is increasing our hub spend exponentially. We went from where, when you look at our goods and services, when you take out the state term contracts, we are well above our percentage of goal of 10% on the norm. We're at least hovering around it or above it, based on the fact that our small purchases are going directly to hub vendors. Then in our market range where we're getting under contract, where we require those 3 quotes, at least one of them has to be a hub vendor. So we're making sure that we're meeting those goals there. And then we put that language in for anything above 50 that's going out for solicitations, and ensuring that we're trying to get those vendors registered before we cut POs and before we award. With our renewals of those contracts, when we go to exercise renewals, we ask again, we send that same attachment about, is there any 2-tier spend? Do you have any hub vendors that are working on this? Have you done your registration? So we ask that again at the time of renewal, and before we cut the PO for the renewal, if there is additional spend that we can capture, we do that as well. So with the hub certification process, we do have, this is the hub's website. Like I said, that'll be included in this presentation in the back with all these websites that I'll talk about. Just know that now you're registering through the EVP online portal. The application is there, and then you provide all the documents listed depending on what type of business you are. You must recertify every 4 years. So like John said, if you are close to that, make sure and reach out to them if you need help. Otherwise, it's all still done electronically, and even recertification is done through EVP now. This is all the information. I'm getting ready to get into the actual documents you need. I'm going to fly through this. I'm not even going to stop on it, but know that it's in this presentation. If you need to know what kind of documents, depending on what type of business you are, know that the uniform, the main certification is like 5 pages, the hub reciprocity. So if you are registered as a hub vendor in Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, or Virginia, you can get certified on the reciprocity. Or if you are disadvantaged business enterprise certification with DOT, you can get registered as a hub vendor under the reciprocity application. It does not work the other way, as far as I know. So if you're North Carolina, you can't do that in Georgia, but that might change. I don't know. But the reciprocity application is only 1 page. So it's like John said, the reciprocity application is short, and the recertification application is very short as well. Here's all your documents depending on what you need. So that's there for you based on what you are. Any questions on Hub? Also want to state, the Hub office provides training like this We provide a contract management training quarterly. They provide meet the purchaser events. They provide help with a contract that you do have. You can reach out to them. They provide help on how to find those opportunities, all of that. So as a registered hub vendor, you get a lot of access that a lot of other vendors do not get to state procurement and state opportunities, municipalities, community colleges, all of that. So take advantage of it if you are a hub vendor, because I think it's great to know how. The more you know, the better you'll do. So I'm all about it, of teaching our vendors how to do business with the state, just to be able to get better proposals and better work and better performance and all of it. Carla.
Yes, and so thank you, Meredith. The question in the chat, how soon can you recertify before the expiration date? And I know that those notices begin going out at least 60 days before your expiration date. So at that point, you can recertify. So within that 60-day window, you want to recertify. There are no other questions in the chat. We can take a couple of raised hands if someone has a question. And if
All right.
not,
we'll push forward. All right. Now we're going to get into the weeds of submitting your bids and the solicitation documents and how it's used. We're going to talk about the different documents that we use, what's in those documents, what to be on the lookout for. We're going to talk about the differences between a requirement and an evaluation criteria and how we use those. So when it comes to identifying the need, right, the person that knows that there's a problem or knows that there's a need to buy something, that starts at the end user level. So like I said, when you're marketing your stuff, you can always reach out to the purchase office, but really reach out to the purchase office and say, hey, I provide XYZ service. Do you have a contact at the division level that would be a good contact to send my information to? Because they are the ones that are gathering that data. They're identifying the need. They're gathering those quotes. They're reaching out to the vendor community. They know how their boiler works, and so they know what kind of maintenance they need, those types of things. They develop the specifications, the scope of work. And by the time that gets to purchasing, we're there to make sure that they follow the purchasing rules, to make sure that it's a clear understanding of what they need. We do the documentation as far as writing the solicitation documents, posting the solicitation products, going out for bid, doing all of the administrative steps and ensuring that they get what they need, not what they want, but what they need, and that we follow those rules, those laws, those procedures throughout that process. So we prepare these documents once the division, the department, the guy that turns the wrench has decided that he has that need. His first step is to gather all that information and then come to procurement with it to say, okay, here's all my stuff. Here's some quotes for some vendors. Here's some scope of what I need. And then we put it all together to reach out to the vendor community. So with that, direct quotes, like I said, for those things that are up to that small purchase, $31,000, we can get a quote directly from the vendor of what that good or service is for. They put it into e-procurement, into a requisition, and then it goes through the approval flow to execute a PO that goes directly to the vendor. With those quotes, know that they must be 30 days current. They must be on some branded letterhead, some email that says, yeah, I'll sell you 7 widgets for $5. That doesn't work. It needs to be an actual quote with an expiration date or with an issue date. And then it's branded with your company. That's attached in e-procurement. When you get a purchase order that's associated with that quote, you should be able to see your initial quote as well as the purchase order. When you get that all electronically to the contact that you registered with is where that is going. The informal quote is used when we need to get that vendor under contract, right? So now we're talking for things that are up to that 50 grand where we're not going out for bid, but we got to get that vendor under contract to sign the terms and conditions. We're able to add some language, some scope, some specifications. It's usually used for very simple goods. There's not a lot of room to put in a lot of scope of what we're looking for. So it's usually for, I need to buy 7 weed eaters, tell me how much your weed eaters are, kind of situation. The quote is sent directly to the vendors that we have found within the vendor portal to provide a response. There is deadlines on when you need to submit those times of response. I'm sorry, there are no deadlines on when you need to reply to that. However, a state may get, or a department may gather what they need, and as long as they got 3 of them, they move forward with what they go forward. It is a simple 4-page document. It's a PDF. It does have those terms, the link to the state's terms and conditions. So when you're signing that, you're agreeing to provide the goods or services within, at the pricing within, under contract. So just know that when you're signing that, and that the person signing it is obligated to actually sign that, because it does become a legally binding document. The next one is an RFQ. This is used in that same realm where we got to get the terms and conditions signed. It can be used for seeking that competition up to 50 grand where we have to go out for formal bid. But it could also use for over that if we have a waiver, right? So if we went through and we were able to justify that waiver, but we're still over that dollar amount where we have to get under contract. So over 31,000 where we have to get under contract, up to no matter what amount, if it's a waiver, we can use this RFQ. It allows for a scope of services. It allows for the vendor to agree to terms and conditions. It is sent directly to the vendors. It's not posted. It is sent directly to those vendors found that can do this, or if it's a waiver, it's sent to that one vendor for execution. It can be sent via fax. I don't think anybody uses fax anymore, but it's always usually sent via email back and forth. It also could be sent through the Ariba tool now. So we do have the capability to send for waivers through the Ariba tool messaging situation back and forth just to that particular vendor. So fax, email, or the Ariba tool. We'll get into the Ariba tool here in a little bit. They are opened upon receipt. There is no formal bid opening. It is just opened when we get it back from the vendor. We do try to put timelines so that we make sure that we're meeting our needs as far as timing. So there could be deadlines as to when that needs to come back. The next type of document is an invitation for bid. And the invitation for bid is when we're seeking that formal competition. So now we're over 50 grand. We estimate something to be over 50 grand. We are actually posting this out on EVP for the world to see. We are getting back those bids. Normally, the bid is awarded based on lowest bid meeting the requirements. So there could be requirements or specifications within that document that the vendor has to meet to then, for if they're the lowest vendor, are awarded. It is posted to EVP for a minimum of 10 days. That's written in that administrative code as one of those rules, that when formal bids are posted, they have to stay out on that system for a minimum of 10 days. There are public bid openings. Now, my office does bid openings via Teams. Some offices may still have them open in their offices. We mostly work remote now, so we do most things over Teams since 2020. But those bid openings, you can attend. It's not mandatory that you do. And on the norm, the only thing that will be read out is who bid. Know that at the time of the bid opening, within 24 hours, we'll also post to EVP who bid. So if you didn't get to attend the bid opening, you still would be able to see who bid out on the tabulations out on the system. So that's posted out there. Request proposals are used for more complex goods and services. So if we have a problem, but we're not sure what the solution could be, and we want you to provide your best solution to that problem, it also allows us to evaluate on things other than cost. So maybe we want to look at what you've done in the past and relate it to what we're trying to do. Maybe we want to know who's doing the work and what their qualifications are. Maybe we want to know what your approach is, what kind of software, hardware you're going to be using to meet this solution. Those types of things are all listed in the solicitation as evaluation criteria that we will then use to evaluate. Cost is always a factor. It doesn't matter what we're buying. It's always going to be a factor in those evaluation criteria, but it might not be the factor that's most important to us. However we are going to evaluate will be listed in that solicitation. I'm going to tell you where to find that. It is also has to be posted out according to those rules, a minimum of 10 days out on the EVP. There are the same public bid openings and potential for site visits. Quite often, we are just reading out who is bid, not the amount at the bid opening, and we keep the amount confidential until the time of award. And that's so that if we have negotiations during the process, those prices could change. So the final award would have the final pricing in it and all of that. So the pricing could be posted if it's something very simple, but it could be waiting until the time of award to update those tabulations with the actual pricing. The other type of document that we have is called an RFI. This is strictly used for gathering information for the states and to ascertain a level of interest for vendors. It is not a solicitation. It does not become a contract. It does take a lot of work on our vendors, so we don't use it very often. Right now, I have an RFI posted for a solution, a system for our state surplus that includes an auctioning and inventory system. We currently have a system that's 5 years old. We want to figure out what the vendor community has out there that maybe has been updated to maybe replace our current system. So that's usually when this document is used. Like I said, we've asked the vendor to provide a lot of information on their system. We very well might not get any responses, who knows, but it's out there to then help us develop a potential RFP in the future. So after it closes on, I believe, October 2nd, I will just simply cancel that on EVP because it's never going to become a contract. Everything that we get back as far as a response remains confidential. There is no tabulation. There is no award. It all remains confidential until we post a RFP that is then awarded, where we use the RFI to help us draft that RFP. So we will hold on to the documentation that we get back for an RFI for quite a while until we decide if we're going to post an RFP. So within these solicitations, they look very different for a DIT procurement versus a PNC procurement. So where we have templates basically, right? So we have templates for these different solicitation documents. On the norm, PNCs and DITs look very different because there's more security information in the DIT solicitations. This outline that you're seeing right here is for PNC procurement. So like I said, they're templates. Things can move around. They could be in different spots. But on the norm, as a general rule, this is where to find the information within these documents. The IFBs and the RFPs can be very large documents. Really what you're looking for is, why are we buying this? What is the scope that I'm going to be held to if I'm awarded? And how are they going to award it? And then also, are there any timelines and deadlines that I need to meet during this process? So section 1 is usually why the agency is making the purchase. It'll also include the contract term. So is that a 1-year contract with 2 optional renewals, or is it a 5-year contract? Section 2 is the information on how to bid. So it's going to have the schedule. It's going to have the question and answer period schedule. It's going to have what needs to come back with your bid to be able to be found responsive. It's going to tell you where you need to submit your bid, whether they're using the Ariba tool or whether you can mail it in. We at the state speak in letters. There's all kinds of acronyms for everything. So usually in the definitions, if there's specific acronyms, we spell those out in the definitions. Section 3 is how we're going to award. So is it lowest cost meeting specs? Is it that we're going to look at your past experience? What is the evaluation criteria? Is there a point scale attached to that criteria? All that information will be told to you up front of how we're going to award it, and that will be in that solicitation document, usually under Section 3. Under Section 4 are the requirements if awarded. So what's the pricing? What's the invoicing? What's the delivery? What's the warranty requirements? If I'm asking you for references, how many references do I have to have? What do those references have to be for? If I'm asking you for vendor experience, what am I looking for in that vendor experience? If there's proposal requirements that have to be met to be able to even bid, some pre-qualification things. If we're requiring samples, if we're requiring that you submit your financial statements, if you have to have a license, if you have to have a certification, if you have to do background checks, any personal information. So all of that would be the requirements to be able to bid or throughout the life of the contract would be under Section 4. Under Section 5 is the meat, right? So these are the objectives, the specifications, the tasks, everything that you're going to be required to do if you are awarded the contract. It is the scope of work, it is the product specifications, and that is what you will be held to if awarded. If you are ever found to breach a contract, they will state, this is what your contract says, and you've been found to breach because under the scope of work, it says X, Y, Z. Section 6 is the contract administrator sitting on the back end. So it should give you the information on who the state is assigned the contract manager, if you had reports due, where to send those, if there is a dispute, what happens, if there's contract changes, what happens, if there's a product recall, what happens, and then there could be attachments. So there's always going to be a pricing form because we're always going to want to know how much the project's going to cost us. There's instructions to vendors that is standard on just pure instructions to vendors on all state procurement. There's those terms and conditions that you're agreeing to. Location of where the work's being performed. Is it being performed in the U.S.? Is it performed outside the U.S.? There's the Executive Order 50, which is a North Carolina price matching opportunity that we'll get into later. And then there's financial condition that says that you don't have any judgments against you. When's your last audit? And then our supplier diversity form that we talked about during our hub efforts is that hub form. There could be maps. Maybe you need to see where in downtown Raleigh you're doing the work. There could be diagrams of the equipment that we're looking for. Things like that could all be attachments. So like I said, these are templates. They could be moved around. These things could be moved around within those templates. But as a standard, if it's a standard goods and services P&C procurement, this is where you can find those things.
So Meredith, I wanted to interject this question before we leave that slide, because in Section 4, you spoke about financial stability. And we have a question that says, do you need to review a vendor's bank statement to determine if you should award a purchasing contract to the vendor? I just wanted to tie it to that.
Okay. So if that is required for that particular procurement, it would state that. There are occasions where, in a case like where I'm hiring a company for millions of dollars to come and manage the nursing homes for the Department of Military and Veteran Affairs, so the veteran homes, right? And they have to have a certain they have to have a cash capital of a certain amount in their stuff to be able to manage that until they get paid by Medicaid and all. Depending on the procurement, it could ask for those financial statements. We might want to see your last 3 years of statements. On the norm, I would say for small goods and service purchases, we're asking you to sign an agreement that says that you don't have any outstanding judgments against you and you have had an audit, and it is a standard form, and that is what is attached. But if we did require those financial agreements, it would be listed under Section 4. But I would say on the norm for standard goods and services, no, we're not going to go through looking at your financial bank statements for a standard service. But there could be something that is important enough and expensive enough where we do want to make sure that your company is not going to fold And so we want one of our CPAs to look through your financial records. So if that is the case, it would be listed in the solicitation.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep. The other types of documents that we use, there's nothing consistent in procurement except for change. So changes happen along the way. They change before we post. They change during the life of a contract. They change during evaluation. So an addendum are those changes that are made during the bid process. Also, the addendum is used when we get the question and answers back to post for all vendors to see all the questions that were asked with all of the answers. Request for clarification happens during the evaluation stage. If we get something back that doesn't make sense to us, or we just need a little more clarification, we could send a vendor a request for clarification. It's usually a yes, no. We're not asking you to change your bid. We're not asking you to change your price. We're asking you just to clarify something in your bid. A BAFO is a best and final offer. This is when we are in the evaluation stage and we are into the negotiations with a vendor, multiple vendors, what it may be. So with that, the BAFO is the document that solidifies those negotiations, whether it is provide us with your best price. Maybe it is that we're changing, we got all the bids back and we can't afford to do all the phases of this project, so we just want to know what your cost will be if we just do phase one. It could be that you've taken exceptions to our terms and conditions and it's going to specify which terms and conditions we agree upon. Whatever those agreements happen is completed on a document called a best and final offer that's signed by both parties and becomes part of the contract. An amendment changes the contract throughout the life of the contract. So if there's a change, it happens once it's awarded. That's done on an amendment document. So when you're seeing these solicitations out there, be looking out for the words shall, must, and mandatory. Those words are important. Those are things that you have to meet. Those are things that you will be required to do. They could be that you have to do those during the solicitation process, or it could be that once awarded, you will be required to do. Just pay attention to those words. Make sure that you see what those requirements are. Those are associated with a requirement. Make sure you sign your bid. You wouldn't believe how much work you put into all of this, and then somebody doesn't put a signature on it, and we automatically throw it out. This document, the solicitation document, along with your response, along with any of those clarifications and addendums and amendments, all become the finalized contract that you're held to. It does require you to have a signature. We do accept either wet signature or digital signature is fine as well, but as long as it's signed, it can move forward into the evaluation phase. When we talk about the schedule that's listed under that section 2, we are talking about the 10 days when things have to be out for bid. That is from the issue date until the submit bids date. If we have all this other jazz that has to take place in between those 2 dates, it very well could be a lot longer than just the 10 days. So a complex RFP could be out there for literally 2 months to get through and allow the vendors enough time to give us a good response. The difference between a contract award date and a contract effective date could be that we plan to award the contract. Let's say this is a janitorial contract for this building, and we plan to award that contract at the beginning of November, but we got to do background checks and get you badged and get all your people ready to go. So we might award that at the beginning of November, but you don't actually have to start work under that contract until the beginning of December. So the effective date is the actual date of starting work. Those could be 2 different dates. If you take nothing else out of today, make sure that you use the question and answer period on formal bids to your advantage. You can ask us anything. You can ask us who currently has the contract. You can ask us, how much money are you currently paying? You can ask us, hey, I don't understand this evaluation criteria. Can you give me a little more information? You could say, you just said that you want past experience. Are you looking for size? Are you looking for, what are you looking for in that past experience? You could ask, hey, if I have this certification, will that help me? You can ask anything. You could say, I can't figure out the Ariba tool, and we're going to reply back on an addendum and say, call the help desk. But you can ask anything during the question and answer period. There are dates as to when those questions have to be in. It'll be under that schedule. You submit those if it is an Ariba solicitation. There is a message board where you submit those bids. Anything that's answered via phone or in person by the procurement office or on-site visits are not binding. The addendum is posted with all the questions received from all vendors. You're not identified as which vendor asked which question. And then it is posted out on EBP for all vendors to see all the questions. Just make sure that you know when the deadline is to submit those questions, where to submit those questions. All of that information is within the solicitation document of where to submit and when they have to be in. Site visits, we have two different types of site visits. We very well may not have a site visit depending on what we're trying to buy, but if we do, we either have mandatory or urgent cautions. Mandatories are usually used when the vendor needs to actually lay their eyeballs on what they're bidding to be able to bid appropriately, or if you need access to see what you're bidding on by the department. So mandatories are on a specific date, time, and location. If you do not attend a mandatory site visit, we will not accept your bid. That's one of the first things that we look through. If it is mandatory and you did not attend, or a representative of your firm did not attend, then it's automatically rejected. At mandatory site visits, you have to sign in. You cannot be late. They will take that sign-in sheet at the start of the site visit. And if your name is not on it, we will not accept your bid. So be on time, make sure that you get there. If you have questions about where it is, how it is, reach out to the procurement person that's on that solicitation. They can tell you that. An urgent caution is more like, we're going to be there. We'll offer you a site visit. We're there for you to see what you're bidding on if you would like to see it. But you don't have to attend to be able to bid. They're still at a specific time and location. We still get you to sign in just to know who attended, but attendance is not mandatory. And it's not a requirement to be able to bid. Also, in these solicitation documents, it's going to tell you where to submit your bid. So quite often, most of our state agencies are now using the Ariba sourcing tool. So we're going to go into a little bit of how that tool works. Bids are posted out on EBP, and then you click you intend to participate to get into the tool. Some agencies, I'm sure, are still doing things by mail. DOA is not. And then the direct submittal for those things that aren't formal bids can come back via email. So the RFQs and the little PDF IRQs can all come back and go back and forth via email, and the vendor quotes can go back and forth via email. So know that there's requirements when you're looking through those solicitation documents. A requirement is a specification that the vendor either must meet or must submit with its bid to be found responsive. Requirements are yes, no's. They're hard pass or no pass, pass or fail. They're not usually evaluated. So some examples could be that the vendor must deliver the product within 15 calendar days. So if I make that a requirement and you can't get me that product until 30 days, we might be able to go to a vendor that may cost us more, but meets that requirement. A vendor must submit with its proposal a copy of its general contractor's license. If I say that you have to submit that license, with your proposal and it's not there, it's automatically rejected. That is a hard pass. And then whoever's evaluating the bids could look and make sure that that license is valid. But if it's not there to even be able to evaluate, it's a hard pass. Your bid is rejected. Vendor must submit with its proposal 3 references where it's performed similar work. So if we ask for 3 references and you only give me 2, your bid could be rejected. Then the evaluation team could call those references and see if it's similar work, right? So then that's part of the evaluation. The vendor must provide product service manual. If I saw that in a solicitation, it would trigger me to ask the question, when do I need to provide that? Do I need to provide it with my proposal up front? Or if I'm awarded, do I need to send it with the product? So I want to make sure that I'm not found non-responsive for not submitting it with the proposal when you just say I have to submit it. When do I need to submit it? So those are the types of questions that make sure you use that question and answer period to make sure that you're found responsive. You're not automatically kicked out for something very small. Read those things, look for those must, mandatory, shall, submit, whatnot. The criteria is how we're going to evaluate the bidders on what they respond back with. So then we can use that in towards our award. So the 3 biggies that on the norm, we can ask criteria on anything, but on average, what we normally ask for is what is your past relative experience and how in size and scope does it relate to what we're doing? Who's doing the work? The staffing plan. If we ask for an org chart, make sure you provide an org chart. If we ask for certain qualifications, make sure that your staff meets those qualifications. Maybe we ask for resumes on that. And if your staff has worked for other projects, highlight that relate to what we're asking them to do. Highlight that staff member and say that even though they didn't work for your farm, they did this in the past, and these were the results, and this is how great this staff member is that's now going to be on your project. Technical approach, how the vendor is going to meet the business requirements for that project. So maybe we're asking for timeline. Maybe we're asking for what products you're going to use. Maybe we want to see a sample of your reporting that's for this project, any kind of things like that. If they are vague in that solicitation, ask the question. Say, what are you really looking for here? And if I provide XYZ, is that going to be what you're looking for? In vendor experience, I know we always get the question in this session of what we're really looking for there. What we're looking for in past performance or past experience is what have you done and how does it relate to what we're asking you to do? So if this is a power washing RFP and we're saying we want you to hang off the side of the Albemarle building that is 11 stories tall and you have to have rappelling and all of that, yeah, we might ask for those certifications. But in your past experience, I want to know how tall the buildings are that you've rappelled off. I want to know that you've done that. And if your past experience is I've been power washing driveways, it's not in the same scope. But if you say, yeah, I maybe not have done it for a state agency, but I've done it for the Bank of America building downtown, then yeah, that's relatable. So whatever you're trying to do, just relate your past experience, really your staffing qualifications to what we're asking you to do under that scope of work and what you've done in the past. And that's what we're then going to cite in the strengths and weaknesses through that evaluation. So that's really how that evaluation of those different criteria works. I'm going to stop there. Any questions?
So we do have questions in the chat and questions in particular relating to if you're a new vendor and trying to prove your experience. And so I'm going to repeat one question for the how do we show that we can meet the requirements for the vendor's past experience if we've never done contracts before? And give an example of janitorial services and lawn care. And
so
and
if
then,
you're
yes.
So if your firm has not done something to the size and scope as to what we're asking you to do, you very well may not meet that requirement. You just might not. And if you can't relate what you've done, if you cleaned a mall right? But that's not a 16-story building, but it's definitely the same square footage. Relate that, right? So I've cleaned Crabtree Valley Mall, and it is this many square footage, and this is what we did, and it is definitely relatable to what you do because of XYZ. There's no limit on the amount of information you can provide in a proposal. So I would say highlight what you've done and relate it to what we're asking you to do. If you haven't done anything of that same size and scope, you're probably not going to get a state contract, but go look out in the public or the private sector and see what you can get based on that to then be able to bid on state projects, I would say.
Next question, where can we seek support or help with a first time, or what are some tips for seeking help or support for a first time best and final offer response?
So, utilize the hub office. If you are a hub vendor, I would say call them. They do have some opportunities such as this to go through the procurement process. They do have some meet the purchaser events. And then they do offer some aid. There are small business centers around the state that also offer aid. I don't think the hub office directly offers aid in responding to solicitations, but they do have staff that can point you in the right direction to nonprofits and things like that that do provide those services. So reach out to the hub office, I would say.
And then let's see, this question is related to the section on submitting questions with solicitations. And the question is, are all vendor questions available for everyone to see afterwards?
Yes. So we compile all the questions that we get, and we post the addendum to EVP and within the sourcing tool if we're using sourcing. But that's all the questions. If we get the same question 7 times, we still provide that question 7 times, and we'll just reference see question 3, see question 3, see question 3. But we post all the questions we get, and we have to provide an answer to all the questions that we get. So yeah, and it's for everybody that's bidding to be able to see all the questions. And that is why when you are going through a bid process, contact the procurement office if you have any questions, because we are the holders of the answers. We want to make sure that if there is some kind of change that needs to happen, or that there is a question that all bidders need to see, we do that to make sure that there's fair and open competition to ensure that all vendors have the same answer to all the questions. So don't contact the guy that turns the wrench. He's going to refer you, call the purchasing office, send it in writing or whatnot.
And I will call out just a comment made about references, and it says references fatigue. We provided references to NC Hub for certification. Why would references be required again? This is fatigue in relationships to constantly get people and companies to be references. Any comments on that, Mayor, that's from procurement?
Your references for becoming Hub certified could be very different than your references for a particular product or a particular service. And we ask for references for every solicitation that we go out. References not always checked, but often they are. And so it's just part of the procurement process. I know that there may be fatigue, maybe touch base with those references and say, hey, I'm putting you down as a reference. Just know that if I bid on anything, potentially you would get contacted. So they would have the heads up that it's coming. But yeah, that's part of the procurement process, is asking. We want to ensure that you have done what you said you did and that you performed well. So that's part of reference checks during the contracting process. All right, I'm going to move forward.
Okay, that was the last question.
All right. All right, we're going to get into solicitation response methods. So how to submit those bids. We're going to talk in depth about direct submittal, e-procurement collaborative space, and then the solicitation search and response and EVP. So direct submittal is over by email. The vendor for those small purchases can send a direct quote. That's for both RFQ, the PDF, as well as direct quotes. They all must be current within 30 days. The e-procurement collaborative space is a tool within e-procurement. When you say in your registration that you want to participate in e-procurement, part of that, if you've been around for a long time, we used to have an e-quoting system. This kind of functions the same way within the system, where we reach out to registered vendors within the system when we're putting in a requisition to get those quotes. So it works for those things that we don't need to, but it actually includes you signing to the terms and conditions. So it can be used up to 50 grand, and we're going to go into how that collaborative space works. EVP is for our formal bids that are either sent by mail or by the sourcing tool. Agencies use EVP to search for vendors in all of these different areas, whether it's direct, whether it's collaborative, or whether it's going out for bid. The vendors that are registered within the commodity are the ones that can respond to those solicitations. The collaborative space is a tool within e-procurement. I know DOA is not currently using it, but there might be some agencies that are bringing on board slowly but surely. Its users can use the collaborative requisitioning. So basically at the time of need where they need to buy something, when they're setting up their requisition, they can reach out to the vendors. There's a link to your contacts that are registered in EVP to ask for those quotes within the system, line by line. And then it does get you agree to the terms and conditions. It can be used for those things where we have to get under contract but don't have to go out for formal bid. There is training for vendors on how that collaborative space works. So like I said, because DOA is not using it, I'm not very knowledgeable on it, but there is training for vendors to know how it works and how what to expect if a agency department reaches out to you, a state entity. Within EVP, the solicitation search and response. So just know that in EVP, this is where we're posting those formal solicitations. The IFBs, the RFPs are posted out on EVP. The state allows us to solicit for those and advertise for those goods and services and seek that open and fair competition. It allows us to post the tabulations of bidders' prices once the bids are opened or once awarded, and it allows us to send notices of contract award. It allows the vendors to market, search for those business opportunities 24/7. You can look for those business opportunities. You can look for, let's say you're a subcontractor and you want to work together with somebody. You can search through our vendor portal just like we can. It is free to register with EVP, and it allows for those automatic notices based on commodity code, and it allows you to review the tabulations and the awards without having to contact the agency. This is what EVP looks like when you first log on. So when you're not even log on, when you search it on the web, you can search North Carolina EVP, and this is what pops up. Like I said, you don't have to be signed in to browse our solicitations or browse our vendors. You do have to be logged in to be able to submit a bid once you're in that solicitation. If you sign in, you can either sign in here or you sign in here. If you are not a registered vendor, you would click the register button, go through that. If you're a hub vendor, you're already registered. But this is also the link that you would log in to update to recertify as your hub vendor and all of that. But this is like that one-stop shop on this website to get all of that done. Once you are browsing solicitations in EVP, sorry, the dog has had enough. You can search. There is a filter here that you can filter down in the solicitations. So you've clicked, I want to browse solicitation. You can sort by category. You can sort by department. You can look at open If it's already closed, the bid date has already opened, but you're looking for the tabulations. You're looking for a pending solicitation, an award. So now it's been awarded. It would be under this. If we canceled it for any reason, it would be under canceled bids. You can search by all these other different areas. Whether you want to look at just if it's going through sourcing through the Ariba tool, you can click that, you hit apply. You can also search by keyword search down here. You can export everything that comes back into Excel if you wanted to. That gives you all the information there as well. Once you are into a particular solicitation, so this is what it looks like once you're actually in. This was for DOT aggregate. You do have to be signed in under your vendor login to be able to respond to a solicitation. If this is an Ariba solicitation, when you click respond to a solicitation, the system will email you the link to the Ariba tool to then upload your response. You will, however, see within EVP the actual solicitation document as well as in the addendums are all here for you to view without being logged in, without saying I intend to participate. So the general information will be here. If you do bid on a solicitation, make sure you write down at least the solicitation number so that you can go back once it's closed to be able to find it easier. So make sure that you document that number. Within sourcing, so let's say this is an Ariba sourcing, there is all kinds of training on Ariba sourcing. Again, the help desk is there to help you. Call them if you need to talk to a real person. We at purchasing cannot see what you see on the side of Ariba sourcing. So it's very hard for us to help you. Make sure you utilize the help desk or look at this training. The vendor will need to be registered not only with EVP, but also they might ask you for an Ariba network registration if it is an Ariba sourcing event solicitation. Your EVP username and password will be required because that's the only way you can click that intent to participate. And then the vendor responds within each section of the content of the event within sourcing. So once you're in the event of sourcing, there could be prerequisites. There's the content list of what has to be uploaded, and it gives you a countdown. Do not wait until this countdown is down. If you are not, if you haven't uploaded your response by the time this clock ends, it will cut you out of the system and will not let you upload. So you can upload days beforehand, a day beforehand, or whatnot. Any questions on that?
There is a question in the chat stating that they're bidding with the state for hauling, and does all aggregate have to be paid for upfront by the bidder?
Yes, I would assume, but that's really a DOT question. I would ask that during the question and answer period. But most everything, the state does not pay upfront for goods and services. We pay net 30 for most goods and services. I don't know. There could be some kind of exception with aggregate. I don't know. But that would be a great question during the question and answer period, or it might be listed within the solicitation for that particular solicitation if it's outside the norm. But on the norm, the state does not pay for goods, supplies, services, any of that up front. So it's not until services are rendered, and then it's net 30 on the time of the approval of the invoice is when we pay.
All right. No other, oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, I see this one. So can you revise your proposal or quotes once it's submitted early? Yes. So if there's addendums that come out that could potentially change something after you've submitted, there is ways to go in and change. You would log into that particular same link and be able to upload a different document. If you have any problems with that, call the help desk and they can help you walk through replacing a document that was submitted.
All right. No other questions in the chat.
Okay.
To proceed.
All right, so we're going to get into the evaluation methods. We're going to talk about bid openings, what happens there, evaluation methods, references, checks, and Executive Order 50, which was that price matching opportunity, as well as get into the weeds of those requests for clarifications and the BAFO documents of negotiations. So with bid proposal openings, just know that that's only part of the formal bid process. Those IFBs, the RFPs have been posted out to EVP. There is a public open date, time, location, specified location. Like I said, DOA does all of theirs over Teams now, and the Teams link is provided within the solicitation document. The attendance sheet, we will take attendance during the bid opening just to see who's there, but it is not mandatory that you attend. Usually on the back end, once we've opened the bids, we'll kind of tell you what the next steps are. Like it's got to go to the department for evaluation. Then from there, it's got to go to statewide for their approvals. It's got to go through security reviews if it's a DIT. We'll kind of explain the next steps. Vendors can only contact the procurement agent still during this whole process. Just make sure that you take note of the procurement agent's information and contact information. The only thing that they can tell you during the evaluation stage is that it is in the steps of that process where it is. So they might say, you know, the recommendation has been submitted to statewide, and so now we're waiting for those approvals. Or it's still with the evaluation team, they're still going through those the criteria. So they can tell you where we are in the process. That's pretty much all they can tell you. They can't tell you at that point how you did. They can't tell you where you are, if you made it to the next step. They can't tell you any of that information. That cannot be released until the time of award. Tabulations are posted on EVP, so it might just be the names of bidders with the pricing will be updated with that at the time of award. All right, so we've got three different types of evaluations that we do, three different methods, right? So we've talked a little bit about the IFB, that lowest cost meeting spec. So if the lowest vendor that met all the requirements, we have, like I said, in the requirement could have been that I needed to have it within 15 days. And so if you couldn't meet that requirement, then we could go with a bidder that may be more money, but meets that requirement. But they offer the lowest cost to the agency, total cost of ownership, to award to the lowest vendor. Then we could have what's called best value weighted, and this is where we assign a point scale to those different criteria that we have listed within the document. So we could assign that we have your vendor experience and your staffing plan could be weighted more points than the cost. Whatever that scoring method is, it will be posted up front within the solicitation document to know how it's scored. So that's attaching points, percentages, whatever it is, they attach an actual point scale to it. And lastly, we have the best value, just narrative methods. This is where we go through each of those criteria, we document strengths and weaknesses, and we write a narrative justification as to why that vendor provides the best value to the state as a trade-off between performance, experience, staffing versus cost. And so those are the three different types of methods that we use. Whatever method that particular procurement is having will be listed in that solicitation document. If you have any questions on it, ask that during the question and answer period. They have to provide you with an answer. Reference checks, we just talked briefly about that. We do ask for reference checks on most procurements. The reference section can be added as part of that solicitation. If we're asking for them, it will be in that solicitation. It could be made as a requirement that we ask for 3, 5, whatever it is. Just be on the lookout for that must or may provide. The references are used to confirm that the vendor has performed service and offered products of the same size and scope and job performance. We will ask the references pretty much a standard group of questions and use that documentation. It becomes part of the procurement file to make sure that the vendor has done what they said they've done and they performed well in the past. Clarifications and BAFOs, we talked briefly about this, as those documents that we use for changes during the evaluation phase. They request for clarification is sent to the vendor, a vendor, to clarify something in their proposal. It could be clarifying cost. It could be that you told me that 5 widgets were going to cost me $2 a piece, and your total's $12, and you just can't do math. So did you really mean $10? Like that type of clarification can be sent, but it is not used to alter your cost. It is not asking you for additional information. It is not asking you to, like right now, I think we have a clarification because we couldn't find within the vendor's submittal something. So we asked them for what page number is this on? But we're not asking you for any additional information. It very well could not be in there. And if that's your answer, then it's not in there, right? But if we couldn't find something, we might ask you for that clarification. A BAFO is used when we get into negotiations. So it could alter a vendor's proposal. Maybe all the bids came back and they were all too expensive and over our budget. So we need to go back to the vendor and say, can you provide a lower cost? If I take this piece of scope out, will it lower my cost? And if so, what is this amount now? Things like that. So those negotiations. Dog, I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Carla?
We can, yes.
Okay. All right. Executive Order 50 is the price matching opportunity. It is one of the attachments in just goods. It only relates to goods, not services. If the vendor's headquarters are within the state of North Carolina, you can opt to participate in this price matching opportunity with for only North Carolina vendors. If your pricing is within 5% or $10,000 of a non-state registered vendor, we will go to you and say, hey, you opted to participate in the Executive Order 50 price matching. Will you match this out-of-state vendor? You're within that threshold. Will you match that out-of-state vendor and match their pricing to keep those dollars within North Carolina? It's only in goods. It's only in the back of an IFB because that's for goods only. So just be on the lookout for that. And if you're headquartered in North Carolina, you can opt to participate in that price matching opportunity. Any questions on evaluation?
All right. We do have a question. What is the recommended time period a bidder should plan to circle back with the contact person for a status update on a submitted bid?
So now that you know all those approvals that it has to go through, right? So if it's estimated to be over 100,000 and it's got to go to statewide procurement, and if it's over 1 million, it's got to go through legal review. So just know that if it's a large procurement, it can take a lot longer to get finalized. If it's a DIT procurement where it's got to go through security reviews and they have to look at those where the data is stored, that can take a very long time. If it's a standard procurement, something like a janitorial service that still could be over that threshold, I would say that it usually takes 30 days to get awarded on the back end. So I think it depends on the type of procurement, on the timeline, and it depends on who's reviewing it. It depends on the agency's staff, on how they have time to complete it. I would say that if it's a large scale procurement, maybe give it 2 to 3 weeks, but keep checking EVP because, that's where they're going to post the tabulation, and any awards is going to be posted to EVP. So that's your first step. And then if you don't see it on the EVP and it's still in that pending selection stage, then reach out to the procurement officer and say, hey, we closed this 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. Has there been any update? Maybe they'll say, well, it's gotten through the evaluation team and now it's with statewide. So they can tell you where we are in that process. Next question is the price matching opportunity determined by your team and presented to the North Carolina vendor. Yes. So during the evaluation phase, if you opted to participate, when we look at the pricing, if you are within 5%, 10%, or $10,000 of the out-of-state vendor, the procurement team would reach out then to the vendor with a notice of you wanted to participate in EO 50. Do you want to match the out-of-state vendor?
I've done that before, and they've said, well, that's our manufacturer. We can't outbid them. So that's happened to me before. But yeah, that's determined in part of our review for that. Anything else, Carla?
Nothing else in the chat. I think we can.
All right. So let's get into the end of this, the award process. So you've done all of this, you've submitted your bid, you went through all the reviews, you've gone through all the approvals, and now we have an award. So we're going to go over who gets notified of what purchase orders, and then getting you paid on the back end with invoicing. So the award notification comes from the actual agency. The department agency purchasing office will send you maybe a certification of award memo that just outlines the highlights of the contract, what the dates are, what the amounts are, who you can talk to now, that type of situation. All the documents, the awarded contract, those addendums, everything that becomes the actual contract will be attached in e-procurement, and the purchase order will be issued to the contact that's registered in the EVP. The award is also then posted out on EVP for the rest of the bidders in the world to see. Within 3 days of those final approvals is what we attempt to do, is to get that out there. Once the contract award is received, the vendor can then talk to the contract administrator / contract manager about the specifics of the contract. You can now talk to the guy that has the boiler that's actually doing the work to schedule when you're coming and to get everything up and running for him. In your purchase order, be on the lookout for information. This can be included, may be included, and it's not limited to this. Description of the items or services, the bid contract number, accounting codes, pricing, the delivery schedule, payment terms, effective dates of the contract term, including those renewals, transportation and freight. We all know that we want to make that a separate line item. Any terms and conditions, the comments to the vendor, we could add to the purchase order. Now, especially if it's something small. So if it was one of those small purchases, who your contract administrator is and their contact information to actually contact if you have any questions about that item. So you're not contacting the purchasing office, you're contacting the actual person at the agency, even on those small purchases. Also included in that comments, be on the lookout. Maybe we bought something and we don't have a loading dock. So we could add comments to a procurement, to a purchase order, to just the vendor that says something like that. Like, hey, I know you're getting ready to deliver 3 million pounds worth of something and we don't have a loading dock. Where does it need to go? If you have questions on that, you would contact the contract administrator / manager to figure those logistics out. On your invoice, make sure that you are invoicing the bill to address that's on your invoice, and include the following. Include what you've done. If there's a report that has to be attached, include the item description for the services that you've completed. Excuse me, your purchase order number, your contract number, anything that agency can associate back to the purchase order to submit and won't delay processing. Ensure that your remit to address in EVP matches what your EIN number shows. If that is different, our new accounting system cannot pay you, and we have to do these substitute W-9s and all of that, and that can hold up payment. So when you submit when you register an EVP, make sure your remit to address matches what is on your EIN, your social number that you are using. The state typically pays net 30. That's from net 30 from the time of approval of invoice. It gets to fiscal. Check writes happen on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And because it's 2025, we can send electronic payments. That is all done through the state office of the state comptroller's office. If you simply Google, or this is the information on the EFT's electronic fund transfer to sign up for, that is all done through the state comptroller's office. This is the website for that. Any questions on payments? Yep. Myrna, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Cooper of Aspire Trucking and Transportation Services. We focus on hauling. So my question is on the actual invoice, if it's slightly higher than that 31,000 that you said we can get approved for in terms of our submitted bid, what happens then? And the reason for it would be if the aggregate count was a slight bit higher for delivery than was quoted.
So you're saying you got your so on the after effect, they're going to have to change their PO because originally it was a small purchase and now it's going over that threshold where they should have had you under contract. I mean, I think it was up to the agency on how they handle that because that's going to be under agency threshold. I don't know if they would just change their PO to then add it or if then they would reach out and get you to sign something. So okay, I think it would be on a case-by-case basis, depending on the agency on how they would handle that. Because originally you would have been awarded based on that cost. So
sounds good.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we're just out confusion. I might want to eat the overage. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I think that would maybe, that would be more paperwork.
Thank you.
Yep. All right.
No other questions.
Okay. All right. So on the back end, you now have this contract. We're going to go over just some contract monitoring tips and things to think about on the back end once you do have a contract. We're going to go through contract management, inspections and testing, renewals and amendments, vendor protests, and how those work, and then public records requests and how you can use that as well. So a good idea is once you have that contract, especially if it's got a term where you're going to be in bed with these people for the next 3 years, why not have a kickoff meeting? Why not clarify those terms and conditions, get everybody on the same page, understand what your goals and objectives are, make sure you understand what's in the scope of work so that you know what you'll be held liable for, clarify who's doing what. Communicate those roles, responsibilities, get the contact information. Maybe the person that submitted the bid was a salesperson, and now you're turning it over to technicians that actually are doing the work. So get all on the same page. If your contract manager has not reached out to you, reach out to them and set that meeting up so that you can start off on the right foot. It took us a long time to get here, to get it awarded. We don't want to do it all over again. So if everybody's on the same page and we have the documentation to document all of that, and that you know when reports are due, you know when deliveries are due, things like that. It's always a good idea. So we always suggest having a kickoff meeting with the agency now that you can talk to and get the specifications together. Know that any inspection and testing is done by the agency, that actual division, your contract manager. So they'll notify you if we have any damaged goods that came in inaccurate order or late shipment. Can also notify through e-procurement for those small things, for back orders, stuff like that, can all be identified in e-procurement. Know that invoices will not be paid until the agency completes inspection of the goods and they are accepted within e-procurement. So once a good is received in e-procurement, that means that you can then invoice for it. Delivery is not considered to have occurred if it's a piece of equipment that has to be installed until it's actually installed, up and running, and the area is clean and free of waste and debris, and it's all good to go. The vendor's responsible for leaving that clean and ready to use and actually working, and then you can invoice for it. Know that we do have complaints processes. We at DOA are very unique that we actually have a policy manual written on how we deal with vendor complaints. But any complaints that happen are first handled at that agency level. They're in it every day. They're working with you hand in hand to make sure that that contract is completed. They will reach out if they have a problem. And if you do get a complaint, address it. Try to figure out how to fix it. Like I said, it took us a long way to get here. We don't want to have to do it again. We'd rather y'all solve your differences and figure out what needs to happen. Maybe an amendment is needed. Maybe we need to change something in writing. to make sure that it's meeting what everybody wants to do. If you ever do get to the point where you get a formal vendor complaint that actually comes from the purchasing office, that is where we're finding you in breach of contract. So now it's a big deal. So basically that letter says that your contract administrator manager has gotten with you. They've reached out. The problem still exists. We're now to the point where we're finding you in breach of contract. Here's what your contract says, and here's what you're not doing. There are deadlines to respond and deadlines to fix the problem within that complaint. It does also give you the opportunity to say, no, I don't agree with this complaint. So then if we need to set up a meeting to discuss the complaint, we can do that as well. So it does give you the opportunity to fix the problem before we do any type of action as far as termination or anything like that. You're always going to have the opportunity to fix the problem. And maybe that problem fix is that we have to change the contract to amend it to add more money to it. Who knows? But we want to get them going to where we don't have to start the whole process over again. So we too try to resolve any complaints. With those renewals, I know we've discussed this a little bit, but the contract standard term is 3 years. Often that's 1 year with 2 optional renewals. Anything that goes over 3 years, we do get that approval up front, and we do have to justify why we're doing that. Renewals are optional only on the state's sole option and do not have to be exercised. Renewal agreement, when it is exercised, an agreement/amendment is sent to the vendor, and we both sign that we are exercising that next renewal. So renewals are written in the contract up front. We got an approval for those renewals. We are just exercising that renewal. Often you will get a new PO, so that money is not encumbered until you get that renewal is actually exercised. So you might get a new PO for that. Make sure that when you're invoicing, you are invoicing with the correct PO for the correct year of the contract. That's an accounting thing to make sure that our accountants are paying off the right lines, the right POs, and all of that when they're keying invoices. Amendments are to change anything. So during the life of a contract, if we need to change rates, we need to change extensions. Maybe now we've run through our renewals and the project's still not over, we need to extend. We would have to amend. Maybe the scope changes enough where we need to amend the scope for something. Maybe cost changes are needed, so we have to amend. Only the purchasing office can change the terms of a contract. If your landscaper that works for facilities says, yeah, just take care of the ants while you're cutting the grass and just bill me for it, you'd be like, no. If it's not in writing, I'm not going to get paid for it. So I need to amend my contract to make sure that it's part of the contract and it's added to the PO so that when the bill comes, we can actually pay it. So know that the purchasing office will put anything in writing, and if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. So just make sure that covers you, me, and everybody else to make sure that you get paid appropriately and that we get what we're paying for. So vendor protests is during the formal bid process. If a vendor has a bid on the contract, on the solicitation, and they feel like there is a reason that the state did not follow its own rules, or that there is biases, or there's something that you do not agree with where it has harmed your company in that award of that contract, you may submit a protest memo letter. It does have to be submitted. There is information in that instructions to vendors. That's attachment B of our solicitation documents, tells you where to submit it. It does have to be submitted within 30 days. This is not your opportunity to see how you did. Your opportunity to see how you did is to submit a public records request. This is an actual formal protest of the award. So with that, all protest letters must cite certain reasons as to why you are protesting in that protest letter. A public records request can be submitted to the department that you bid on their solicitation. Even if you didn't bid, anybody can submit a public records. Everything in state procurement is public record. And so it might take us a minute to find it. So if you have any information as far as the department that solicited, the PO numbers, the contract number, the awarded vendor, what it's for, any of that information, the title, It helps us find that record to then go through and redact any confidential information and then release it to you. Often our departments have a form of some sort on their website to request a public records request. So there's lots of web-based forms for each department to be able to get those. And just note that when you're submitting a bid, that if you have something that is trade secrets or that you don't want released in a public records request, that it is up to the vendor to mark what is confidential in their proposal. So that's then what is redacted. We don't go through and redact what we think shouldn't be released. We only redact what the vendor has marked as confidential. So, and know that pricing is never confidential. You cannot mark pricing as confidential. That's state record because those are taxpayer dollars that we have to show the public how we're spending them. So with that, note that if a bid is currently out for bid, we will only release who currently has that contract and what the pricing is. We often do not release a current contract while that contract is out for bid. So that is just because that current contract could have different scope. It could cause issues. So if you want to see after award, the contract that's been awarded, if you want to see the awarded vendor's bid, if you want to see our documentation of our evaluation, there is always usually an award recommendation letter that outlines how we evaluated and outlines the justification for the award. So that's always a good thing to ask for, is the award recommendation letter. So this is the public records law on how public records work. But like I said, each department, if you simply Google DOA public records, you'll find our form. And that's probably the same with most state agencies. These are the websites that we talked about today, including purchasing contracts, statewide DIT, where you can find their state term contracts, EVP, where you can register to do state business with the state and find those opportunities, and our vendor search, e-procurement, where you can find all the training and the e-procurement help desk information, and the hub office, where you can sign up to get all this great information and trainings and to register as a hub vendor and get their info. That is it.